Aster's Eddington stars Joaquin Phoenix, Pedro Pascal, Emma Stone, and George Floyd. It's part character study, part social satire set during the early months of COVID in a small New Mexico town. And at the center is Joe Cross, a sheriff who slowly spirals into something ugly as fear, uncertainty, and cultural noise close in around him. I was actually looking forward to this movie. Ari Aster isn't necessarily like one of my all-time favorite directors or anything, but when it comes to, Midsommar and Hereditary, those movies deeply upset me, and I think they're fantastic. I never did have a chance to go see Beau is Afraid, and maybe that would have changed my perspective going in, but when I heard that he was making a movie about like 2020 and like COVID, starring, the people I mentioned earlier, I thought it was too big to fail. Light spoiler warning, but I'm sure if you're watching this review, you probably have already seen the film. And I'll be honest, guys, I am pretty split on this movie. As like a personal dissent film, I feel like this movie works really well. I think Joaquin Phoenix absolutely kills it as Joe, and you really, see the tension that he brings to every scene. And just the way the film itself like tracks this like turn of character in a way that is believable but still shocking, it was really well done. But the more this movie tries to comment on the real world, the more I feel like it unravels. It looks like it's trying to stay neutral, but the choices it makes just say otherwise. And it starts to feel like, for lack of a better term, like please if you have one, let me know, but it starts to feel a bit like centrist propaganda. Real issues get flattened, big players get left out, and what's left is just like a lot of posturing without any clarity. If this was just like the story of Joe Cross, like I think it would have been fine. But because it pulls from real world like movements and tragedies and like core moments from our recent history, it starts to feel like it's taking advantage of the audience and our experience during those times, and it doesn't really like engage with it in any real way. Like the movie wants the weight of those real events, but none of the responsibility. So one of the things that Eddington tries to do is just capture the absurdity of 2020, and it does a lot of that through satire. It pokes fun at, protesters, politicians, conspiracy theorists, tech bros, pretty much anyone that had a voice in 2020, this movie goes for. This movie spends a lot of time pointing at the left, whether it's like, online activism or like liberal guilt. And not only is it valid because yes, there was a very high level of, performance of, that people were bringing at that time, but it was funny. Straight up, it was just funny. So what's frustrating is that it doesn't really take any shots to the other side. Hey, calm down, let me explain. So in this movie, there's pretty much no Trump, there's no MAGA, no satire of the people who were like actually in power during this time and who may or may not have been, spreading misinformation on national television.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear. It'll go away. It will go away. It's going to go away. It will go away. It's going away, and it is going away. It's going to go away.
And what ends up happening is that the film feels like it's targeting like one half of absurdity, that feels safe to mock, and then just like avoiding the other. And listen, I'm not saying this movie had to be some sort of like, moral takedown of the GOP. I don't need that. I doubt you want to see that. And even with like Mickey 17 that came out earlier this year, they just went way too hard with it, and it did kind of ruin the movie for me. I just feel like if you're going to take something as big as the George Floyd protests and kind of paint the whole thing as some like self-serious liberal theater, it makes it weird when you avoid the gold mine of material the other guy was giving and the influence it had on millions of people. And even with the Michael character, who is Joe's deputy, we'll talk more about him later, but they really make it seem like he's gonna offer some sort of like nuance to that aspect of the movie, and they kind of just let him fade off to the background. So then it kind of goes back to feeling like the movie would rather just call people cringe and call it a day and not really like engage with anything that it's trying to present. The tone of this movie does fit a lot of Ari Aster's previous work. We got the tension and the dread and the sudden violence, and Eddington, checks all those boxes. There's moments in this movie that are genuinely funny, others that are very upsetting, and then the rest of them just kind of fall in between. And I like it, but I would be lying if I said the tone didn't kind of mess with the movie a bit. But it's kind of hard to tell what we're supposed to be thinking. Like, is this movie a reflection? Is this movie a warning? Is it a character study with political elements, or is it a political movie centered around one guy? And maybe that confusion is the point, but once again, when a movie is dealing with these like real world like things that just happened not too long ago, it kind of creates a disconnect. Like this movie clearly knows how it wants to look and feel, but when it comes time to say something, it just takes the safest route every time. All right, let's talk about performances. So Joaquin Phoenix is definitely the best person in this entire movie. His performance as Joe is tense, slippery, and unsettling in all the right ways. You know, the character definitely feels the most real and fleshed out. It's not like a subtle performance, but it is a very effective one. I do feel like this movie is at its strongest when it focuses on him. Watching how he like shuts down or like lashes out. It's just a great job of forming this character that, you know, we don't have to like, but we will understand. And now the saddest thing is that none of that attention is really given to any of the other characters. Pedro Pascal's in this movie. He plays Ted something, I forgot his last name, and he's kind of like the opposite to Joe Cross's character. And the movie doesn't really give you a lot of time alone with him, and you don't really get to see how he is outside of 1 or 2 scenes where he's, you know, being kind of the stereotype politician. Same with Emma Stone. She plays Joe Cross's wife, and while I do like the story that they kind of wove in there, she was like so underused in this film that I genuinely like they could have picked anybody else. That did not need to be Emma Stone. Actually, I'm just remembering now, Austin Butler is also in this movie. He has like 7.5 lines, and it's just like, why did we get these people for this movie? I mean, I guess maybe for like star power or whatever, but yeah, wasted talent. It just feels like most of the cast just falls into this like stereotype support role. This movie clearly wants to wrestle with some big themes, and in moments, it feels like it really might get there. Like I mentioned earlier, Michael, he is pretty much the most grounded character in this entire movie, and he's someone that really could have been this like emotional anchor, or at least an easy way for the movie to expand its own perspective. This movie hints at the rise of misinformation, but doesn't really talk about how it spreads or who benefits from it. And there's some sort of point being made about like, you know, tech and AI, but you know, that's pretty vague. Once again, I'm not trying to say that this movie needed to have answers or like it needed to provide some sort of morality, but it doesn't even seem like curious. It introduces a ton of weighted material and then kind of shrugs at it and moves on. So it feels like they did all this setting of 2020 and COVID and this like, you know, tumultuous time just as background dressing. There is a version of this movie in there that really works. It's well crafted, well acted, and you could feel the ambition behind it. But once this movie tries to start reflecting something bigger, you know, about America or like 2020, that's when it starts to break. And this movie constantly hints at giving more without really delivering any. So just for you guys who need to hear it again, the problem is not that this movie needed to provide some sort of like political stance, but it needed to show some sort of perspective to let the audience know it knew the weight of what it was playing with. So yeah, there is a braver, sharper version of Eddington out there somewhere. One that asks tougher questions, gives other characters like, you know, for example, Michael more room to breathe, and doesn't feel like it's hiding behind its jokes. I think a movie like this probably needed a couple more years in the oven when we were more, you know, socially distanced from this time period. So I got a real question for you guys. Do you feel like there is another filmmaker out there that could have made, you know, a different sort of movie about COVID in 2020 that you think would have gone well? Like, let me know. That's something I'm curious about. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.